My fiancée was about to show up at my door to break off our engagement, but she unexpectedly heard my inner thoughts. Damn, she really is the main character. She has one of those faces, the kind you just want to take to bed. In an instant, the living room fell deathly silent. Why is everyone so quiet? Oh, I get it. You're all waiting for my performance, aren't you? Mr. and Mrs. Heiress looked completely baffled. What performance? The next second, they watched as I yanked Chloe Vanderbilt into my arms and leaned in close. Chloe, my dear, you came to see me, didn't you? I knew it. You care about me more than anyone. I love you so much. Chloe Vanderbilt froze in place as a voice echoed clearly in her ears. My brain just short-circuited. Do I really have to keep up this act? But Chloe hates being touched more than anything. Now that I'm holding her like this, she's bound to despise me even more, right? Hey. In the living room, everyone who could hear my thoughts fell silent. The Heiress family shot me complicated looks. Meanwhile, I stayed bent over in that hug for several seconds, my back starting to ache, but Chloe still hadn't pushed me away. What's this girl's deal? Why isn't she shoving me off? According to the script, she's supposed to hate me, to loathe my touch, right? Doesn't she usually act like I've smeared her with filth, needing to shower for 3 days straight? Seeing no reaction from her, I had to maintain my persona as a hopelessly devoted lover and just keep holding on to Chloe. Chloe, my love, I missed you so much. My heart ached just thinking about you. Tisk, why are the Heiresses so quiet? Aren't they supposed to be yelling at me for being so shameless? My mind was racing as my hand couldn't resist stroking Chloe's waist, my face a mask of deep affection. Damn, she has a great figure. This waist feels so soft. That Julian Croft guy is one lucky bastard. I think I remember a plot point where someone gets drugged. Maybe I should just take advantage of the situation, sleep with her, and at least get some enjoyment out of this. The next moment, Chloe shoved me away forcefully. I went with the momentum and collapsed onto the floor, clutching my cast-covered hand and letting out a pained wail. Ah, it hurts. Olivia Harris's eye twitched as she instantly remembered the doctor's instructions from the other night, her gaze instinctively darting to my cast. A second later, my voice popped into her head. If I pass out right now, could I scam her for 100 or 200,000 in medical bills? No, that's too little. An amount like that is an insult to a Vanderbilt heiress. It's got to be at least 7 figures. Chloe watched the man on the floor, Ethan Heiress, without a change in expression, her mind rapidly processing the fact that she could hear his thoughts. She glanced up, subtly scanning the faces of the Heiress family on the sofa. They were all completely blank. Wait, is she the only one who can hear me? How is that possible? Why is Chloe just staring at me? Didn't she come here to break off the engagement? Are we sticking to the script or not? If we don't get this breakup scene over with, her grandmother is going to end up in the hospital soon. A glint appeared in Chloe's eyes as she said coolly, "Get up." I lay on the floor and said weakly, "I'll only get up if my dear Chloe gives me a hug. This should make her flip out, right?" Chloe felt like she had just dug her own grave. She cleared her throat. "It's improper for a man and a woman to be so close. You should get up on your own." I scoffed internally. Improper? Is that how it is with me? According to the script, you and Julian weren't married either, but you didn't seem to have that thought when you were tumbling into bed with him. On the sofa, the Heiress family could barely contain themselves. Was this conversation really appropriate for them to hear? Fine, I understand, Chloe. With that, I picked myself up off the floor. Chloe's lips parted, but just as she was about to speak, a sudden ringtone cut her off. I subtly raised an eyebrow. This must be the call telling her that Mrs. Vanderbilt is in the hospital. The old woman really has it rough in her golden years, still managing that massive family empire at her age. Chloe's uncle has been circling like a vulture. The maid he planted by her grandmother's side has been poisoning her daily, which eventually leads to a fatal heart attack. A dark glint flashed across Chloe's eyes. Her grip on her phone tightened, but she forced down the turmoil rising within her. She answered the call. "Mr. Peterson, what is it?" "Chloe, you need to get to the hospital. Your grandmother just collapsed." Chloe's heart clenched. She hastily said, "Okay," hung up, and rushed out. I was the only one left standing there, my expression contorted. She's just leaving? What about the breakup scene? Has the plot gone completely off the rails? As Chloe left, she shot me a meaningful glance. I immediately put on a worried expression in response, but she said nothing, leaving me to question my entire existence. After Olivia saw Chloe out, I turned back to Mr. and Mrs. Heiress on the sofa. Mr. Heiress quickly hid behind a newspaper, and Mrs. Heiress busied herself with her teacup. "Oh, reading the paper, are we? Get a good look now. It won't be long before old man Heiress ends up in the ICU, only to have someone pull his oxygen tube and let him suffocate. So tragic." Mr. Harris's heart leaped, and even Mrs. Harris's hand trembled so hard that tea sloshed from her cup. I asked with concern, "Mom, is your tea too hot, too?" "Yeah, drink up. Drink all you can now. Soon enough, you'll be scrounging for scraps in a dumpster." Mrs. Harris was utterly confused. Just then, Olivia, having returned from seeing Chloe off, stepped through the door, only to be met with her brother's gloating inner voice. "And my dear older sister, Olivia, is the most special case. In the end, she actually—" "And then what? Why did he stop? Doesn't he know that leaving people hanging like that is torture?" The three of them in the living room stared at me, dying of curiosity, desperate to just ask me what I meant. But I just walked straight to the dining room to have breakfast. To keep listening to my thoughts, Mr. and Mrs. Harris, who had already eaten, followed me to the dining table. As I was happily digging in, I heard Mr. Harris suddenly say, "Olivia, you should ask your sisters when they're coming home. None of them are ever around." Olivia replied leisurely, "Isabella finished her fellowship. She should be back from Europe in the next couple of days." "Fellowship? Is she talking about my second sister, Isabella?" I mentally pulled up the file on her. What a shame, my brilliant second sister. First, she gets framed for plagiarism. Then her career is ruined after she's implicated in a student's suicide. In the end, she falls into a deep depression and ends her own life with pills. By the time anyone found her, the body had already started to decompose. Rage filled Mr. and Mrs. Harris's eyes. Olivia shot a meaningful glance at me as I ate, then continued, "Sophia is in the middle of a serial killer case right now, so I doubt she'll have time to come home." I feigned disinterest and took a sip of my milk. "Ah, Sophia, my twisted third sister. She once locked the original me in the basement, which nearly gave me permanent trauma. Who would have guessed? Right now, she's seen as the most promising forensic pathologist of her generation, but in the future, she'll personally dissect her own father, sister, and brother. The trauma will turn her into a criminal, and she'll be the one to put herself behind bars." Serves her right. Mr. and Mrs. Harris's hands, holding their forks, tightened as they struggled to control their emotions. Olivia lowered her gaze, her hand on the table clenching into a fist. She then added, "Amelia just started a new film. She told me they're shooting on location in the Appalachians, so she probably won't have time either." Suddenly, my thoughts exploded in their minds. My fourth sister, Amelia, has it the worst of all. After the Harris family goes bankrupt, her career in Hollywood nosedives. Her frenemy targets her viciously, and she becomes a nobody. Then, some creepy tycoon takes a liking to her and locks her up as his personal plaything. By the time she's found, she's completely lost her mind. And what's more, that same creepy tycoon is the investor for her current movie. Amelia's already in his sights, isn't she? Jesus, not a single person in this family gets a happy ending. What kind of terrible karma are they carrying? At this, the composure on Mr. and Mrs. Harris's faces finally began to crack. Was their family's future really that bleak? Worried I'd noticed something was off, they forced themselves to remain calm. "Ethan, dear, take your time eating. Your father and I have some work to attend to, so we won't keep you company." As they left, they shot a look at Olivia. After they were gone, Olivia remained seated, staring intently at me, hoping I might reveal more. But after a few moments, I had finished eating. I stood up, announced, "I'm heading to the hospital for a follow-up," and walked out. Watching my cheerful retreat, Olivia broke into a knowing smile. It was fine. She could be patient. She was determined to uncover every single secret from my mind. On the way to the hospital, I lounged in the back seat and started reviewing my mission progress. Opening the status page, I saw the numbers and a satisfied smile spread across my face. Excellent. The original Ethan has already done half the work for me. Getting my $3 billion and returning to Earth is well within reach. But as I scrolled down, I froze. What the hell? Mrs. Vanderbilt's affinity level is at 100%. My brain just short-circuited. Hey system, what's the deal with her? How is her affinity maxed out already? Mrs. Vanderbilt simply adores Ethan Heiress. Why else would she want him as her grandson-in-law? The system replied. I guess the system has a point, but the original Ethan did so many absurd things, making the Heiress and Vanderbilt families the laughingstock of New York City. How could she not mind any of that? Host, would you like to alter your strategy for Mrs. Vanderbilt and try to raise her affinity level instead? Get real. Do I look like I'm here to make friends? I rejected the system's suggestion and told it to shut up, a mischievous glint in my eye. If I remember correctly, the story's male lead is supposed to visit Mrs. Vanderbilt in the hospital. Perfect timing. I'm definitely crashing this party. I'm going to make Chloe and her first love, Julian, as uncomfortable as possible, drive a wedge between them, and ruin whatever impression her grandmother has of me. 3 birds with 1 stone. Woohoo! When I found Mrs. Vanderbilt's room, Chloe was sitting by the bed peeling an apple, with the story's male lead, Julian Croft, standing beside her. My eyes lit up, and I was itching to charge inside. The main characters. If I barge in and interrupt them now, my animosity points will definitely skyrocket, right? The familiar voice in her head made Chloe's hand pause. I looked up at the bodyguards blocking the doorway and flashed them a brilliant smile. Their scalps prickled with unease. The next second, I was screaming at the top of my lungs. "Chloe, help me! They're trying to kill me!" The bodyguards' eyes went wide in shock, and everyone in the room whipped their heads toward the door. The guards backed away in horror, keeping a 10-foot distance, their entire bodies screaming denial. "No, we weren't, Mr. Heiress. Don't frame innocent people." I sneered internally. "That's what you get for treating me like a wild animal. Taste my slander." Mrs. Vanderbilt, propped up in her bed, smiled and beckoned to me. "Ethan, dear, you're here. Come in, come in." I swaggered past the guards, shooting them a smugly raised eyebrow. Inside, Julian was holding a glass of water, standing very close to Chloe. They looked intimate. Julian gave me a gentle look and said in a friendly tone, "Ethan, you're here. Come, have a seat over here." He acted as if he owned the place. I glanced at the spot Julian indicated, the visitors' seating area, a fair distance from Chloe and her grandmother. "I'll sit wherever I damn well please. Who are you to tell me what to do? This isn't your house. I'm being this rude. Surely Chloe and her grandmother have to be getting annoyed by now. Come on, react." Chloe fell silent, listening to his inner thoughts. How could someone be so completely two-faced? Unaware of her reaction, I stomped over, shoved Julian aside, and wedged myself between him and Chloe. I glared at Julian. "Chloe is my fiancée. Can you please stay away from someone who's already taken?" The original Ethan used to do this all the time, treating any male who came within 2 feet of Chloe as an enemy. It's exactly why she couldn't stand him. Julian, caught off guard, stumbled back, sloshing water from the glass. The smile on his face faltered. He glanced at Chloe, expecting her to recoil from me as she always did, but she didn't. A flicker of disappointment crossed Julian's face before he forced a smile. "Ethan, you've misunderstood. I just think of Chloe as a friend." "Friend?" I snorted internally. "Yeah, friend first, then like a sister, and finally my little baby, right?" I kept stealing glances at Chloe. "Seriously, I'm acting like a total jackass to both of you, and you're just sitting there? Yell at me. Kick me out. Do something." Julian had clearly seen my brand of chaotic harassment before, but in front of Mrs. Vanderbilt, he was at a loss for words. He shot a pleading look at Chloe for help. She, however, was still meticulously peeling an apple, as if she were trying to sculpt a masterpiece. Julian felt even more dejected, his expression turning awkward. "Then what can I do to make you happy, Ethan?" I scowled. "Just existing in my line of sight makes me unhappy. If you had any sense, you'd disappear the moment you see me. Stop being an eyesore." As I said this, I kept glancing over at Chloe and her grandmother. "Seriously, lady, how are you still in the mood to peel that apple? I'm about to verbally abuse your boyfriend into a depressive episode. Forget the apple. Come at me." Chloe was getting a headache. She silently cut the peeled apple in half and handed a piece to her grandmother. The sight of this made everything click into place for me. Chloe's staying quiet because she doesn't dare defend Julian in front of her grandmother. This is her subtle way of protecting him. I'm so moved by their love story. Truly. Is her grandmother deaf? Did she not hear a word I just said? "Ethan, don't just stand there. Come sit by Grandma," Mrs. Vanderbilt said, patting the bed beside her. "She really does like me." The affection in her eyes is completely undisguised. Okay, that confirms it. The old lady is definitely deaf. I snapped out of my thoughts, grinned widely, and squeezed right next to Chloe on the edge of the bed. A vein throbbed in Chloe's temple as she subtly scooted away. "Here, have some apple," Mrs. Vanderbilt said, immediately passing me the slice Chloe had just given her. But I put on a shy expression, looked at the other half of the apple in Chloe's hand, and said, "I want the one Chloe is holding." At my words, Mrs. Vanderbilt's gaze shifted to the apple in Chloe's hand. Then she stared intently at her granddaughter. The look in her eyes suggested that if Chloe didn't hand it over, there would be trouble. "Here," Chloe said, handing it over with a blank expression. I glanced at the heartbroken Julian, a glint in my eye, and took a bite right from Chloe's hand. My warm lips brushed against her fingertips, and she snatched her hand back as if she'd been shocked. Her expression darkened. "Ethan," she warned. I took the apple from my mouth, held it up, and took another bite while grinning at Julian. Wow, an apple peeled by Chloe herself is just the sweetest. I'm so happy thinking I'll get to eat these every day after we're married. Mrs. Vanderbilt watched our intimate display with great satisfaction. Well then, she said gently, once you're of legal age, Grandma will arrange the wedding for you too. How does that sound? I nodded shyly, but my mind was racing. Legal age? That's next year. No way. I have to find a way to make Chloe max out her animosity points and break off this engagement sooner. I have no desire to be a pawn in her and Julian's little romantic drama. Chloe wiped the fruit knife with a tissue, listening to Ethan's thoughts, her eyes filled with scrutiny. So his real goal was to break off the engagement. Then why was he constantly pestering her, pretending to be so infatuated? Her gaze darkened as she looked at him. What was he really up to? I paid no attention to her stare, munching on my apple and plotting how to make Chloe hate me even more. I've already been such a jerk, and neither of them reacted at all. She didn't even defend Julian. This act is falling flat. Maybe it's time to just go completely ballistic. Listening to his thoughts, Chloe's expression soured. Her grandmother had just woken up, and she was worried I'd cause a scene, so she stood up, grabbed my arm, and pulled me out of the room. Seeing Chloe's grim face, Mrs. Vanderbilt worried she was going to hurt me and called out, "Chloe, you can't bully Ethan." Julian's eyes fixed on Chloe's hand holding mine. He gritted his teeth. "Grandma, don't worry. I'll go talk some sense into her." With that, Julian followed us out. Chloe dragged me to the end of the hall and yanked me into the emergency stairwell. She was surprisingly strong. I raised an eyebrow, giving the secluded stairwell a suggestive look. "Chloe, my dear." I took a step toward her, closing the distance. "Could it be you wanted to get me alone too?" Chloe's face was cold as she took a step back. "Stop right there. Don't move." I obediently froze. I have to admit, she's giving off some serious gloomy villain vibes right now. She's not going to beat me up on Julian's behalf, is she? Has she finally snapped? Should I fight back or just take it? If I get hurt, does it count as a workplace injury? Chloe's expression darkened, my incessant chattering in her head giving her a migraine. She took a deep breath, her voice laced with a warning. "In the past, I could ignore your antics, but my grandmother is sick. If you're going to cause trouble, do it far away from her." I nodded. "Got it. What she means is, from now on, when I bully Julian, I shouldn't do it in front of her grandmother. Otherwise, it'll be hard for her to defend him." Chloe was about to lose her mind. Why did I always manage to twist her words? I looked at her with an innocent expression. "So, since Grandma isn't here now, does that mean I can do whatever I want?" Chloe crossed her arms and said nothing. "Well, can I?" I pressed, taking another step forward when she didn't answer. A smirk played on my lips, my handsome features taking on an aggressive edge. Chloe looked up, her eyes locking with mine. Chloe has really nice lips. They look very kissable. Stealing a kiss wouldn't be a bad deal. As she listened, a vein in her temple began to throb uncontrollably. She used to think I was just reckless and rude. Now she could add lecherous to the list. Just then, the voice in her head started up again. If Julian saw me kiss her, would he just scatter her ashes during her win him back at all costs phase later on? Given how much Chloe hates me, her animosity points would instantly max out, and my mission would be complete. Julian's coming. Should I kiss her now? You're a lucky girl, Chloe. This is my first kiss. Okay, let me get in the mood. My eyes gleamed with anticipation. Chloe's hands, hanging at her sides, clenched into fists as her mind raced, processing what she just heard. Mission? So this boy in front of me is just using me as some kind of tool. In a flash, a nearly invisible smile touched Chloe's lips. She grabbed me, spun me around, and pinned me between the wall and her own body. What the hell is she doing? Chloe's previous coldness vanished, replaced by a teasing smile. If you want to make our marriage official ahead of schedule, she said, I suppose that could be arranged. I'm completely floored. Wait, do you have some kind of undiagnosed medical condition? This isn't your character. And who wants to make a marriage official with you? Her eyes were cool, but the warm pad of her finger pressed gently against my lips, a hint of intimacy in the gesture. Alarm bells screamed in my head. Why is she acting like a completely different person all of a sudden? I want to snap her finger in half. Get your hand off my mouth. Restrain yourself. Can't break character. Hearing my restrained thoughts, a glint appeared in Chloe's eyes. She suddenly realized that teasing me like this was actually quite fun. She leaned in, her warm breath tickling my ear. What I mean is, we can have the wedding first, and then get the license when you're of legal age. Now it was my turn to be speechless. Did Chloe take the wrong pills or something? Doesn't she want to break up with me more than anything? Or did she and Julian have a fight, so now she's starting the make the male lead jealous plotline? She's pretending to agree to marry me, but it's all to provoke Julian and push their relationship forward. You've really mastered the classic angsty romance tropes. So I can never escape my fate as a stepping stone for your relationship, huh? Well, I refused to play along. I immediately gazed at Chloe with pure adoration. Marriage? Okay, but you have to kiss me right now. Let's see just how far you're willing to go to provoke Julian. The look in Chloe's eyes deepened. Then, she let out a low chuckle and, meeting my look of growing horror, slowly leaned in. She wanted to see just how long I could keep up my act, too. But just then, Julian, who had been lurking nearby for a while, finally couldn't hold back. Chloe, your grandmother told you not to bully Ethan. Julian's appearance made Chloe pause her little test. Even so, from Julian's angle it looked exactly like we were kissing. His face went pale, a deep-seated resentment flashing in his eyes. I took the opportunity to push Chloe away slightly, then glanced shyly at Julian. Oh, someone saw us. You're done for, Chloe. Julian definitely thinks we were just kissing. Your win him back arc is going to be brutal. Just turn around and look at him. He looks like he's about to shatter into a million pieces. Chloe had already reverted to her usual cool, aloof self. She turned and gave the heartbroken Julian an indifferent look. Is whispering secrets with my fiancé considered bullying? Her words were like a dagger to Julian's heart, making him clutch his chest. I raised an eyebrow. I knew it. They must have had a fight. In that case, let me help make this misunderstanding even bigger. The next second, I draped my arm intimately around Chloe's shoulders, pulling her closer and looking smugly at Julian. Mr. Croft, it's very rude to interrupt a couple's private moment. Julian gave Chloe a wounded look, then clenched his fists and forced out, my apologies. I was interrupting. With that, he turned and walked away, looking utterly dejected. Oh wow, Chloe, aren't you going to run after him? Chloe glanced dismissively at the departing Julian, then coolly removed my hand from her shoulder and walked away. I was left behind, sizing up the situation. Chloe has a point. Her grandmother is still sick, so I should probably take it easy on her. I'll just find another chance to tank my approval rating with the old lady later. Mumbling to myself, I headed back to the room, said a quick goodbye to Mrs. Vanderbilt, and went straight back to the Heiress estate. The moment I walked in, I saw a beautiful, elegant woman standing in the living room, a cryptic smile on her face as she watched me. I hear you've been causing trouble again, she said. Sophia, I've been on my best behavior lately. I swear, I replied, putting on my most innocent face. I recognized her immediately, my third sister, Sophia Heiress, the forensic pathologist. At only 25, she was already a rising star in the world of forensic science. Like the other Heiress women, Sophia had delicate features, a stunning figure, and the unmistakable air of high society. I had to admit all my sisters were beautiful, and at this moment, she was staring right through me. That's weird. At breakfast this morning, Olivia said she was busy with a serial killer case. How did she get home so fast? Sophia was slowly stirring her coffee when my voice suddenly echoed in her head, causing her hand to freeze. She raised an eyebrow. What did you just say? I clasped my hands in front of me and blinked innocently. I said I haven't caused any trouble. Not that, she said. I looked at her, completely lost. Sophia narrowed her eyes, a strange light glinting within them. Oh, I remember now. The police must have found new body parts from the victim, so they transferred her back to the city. She has no idea that the suspect they're about to arrest is just a scapegoat. Sophia took a sip of her coffee, her expression unreadable as she silently listened to my thoughts. It wasn't a hallucination. The voice was coming from me, and she was certain my lips hadn't moved. So, these were my inner thoughts? But how could she possibly be hearing her brother's mind? Have I been working too hard lately? Is my body finally breaking down? That must be it. A colleague of mine recently said she saw a cucumber wave goodbye to her. She got checked out and was diagnosed with severe depression and bipolar disorder. Sophia thought to herself that she'd better get a psych evaluation before heading back to the lab. She set her coffee down and walked slowly toward me, her gaze fixed on my cast. A chill ran down my spine, and I quickly pulled my hand back. I haven't forgotten that this sister of mine looks all prim and proper on the outside, but is actually a sadistic monster. The original Ethan once knocked over one of her specimens, and she locked him in a room filled with things floating in formaldehyde until he was sick with fever. I yanked my hand back and hid it behind me. Sophia's eye twitched, and when she looked up, her gaze was as cold and sharp as a viper's. I knew very well that of the 4 Heiress sisters, Sophia was the most difficult, and the one the original Ethan feared the most. If you want to keep living in this house, you'd better tone it down. Mom and Dad might not have the heart to kick you out, but that doesn't mean I won't. Do you understand? With that, she returned to the coffee table, pulled out a wet wipe, and began scrubbing her hands as if she just touched something filthy. I understand, Sophia. I glanced at her quickly before lowering my head, my long eyelashes hiding the amusement in my eyes as I feigned fear. Enjoy it while it lasts. In a couple of years, the Heiress family will be in ruins, and I'll be sure to visit you in prison to laugh in your face. Sophia stopped wiping her hands, her expression hardening. She looked like she wanted to say something but then thought better of it. She wasn't sure if she was the one with the problem or if I was. She glanced at me, still standing by the door, as if trying to understand my motives. You sold a piece of lingerie for $5,000? Don't mom and dad give you $50,000 a month? Is that still not enough for you? Wait a minute, I thought. How much? $5,000 for one piece of lingerie? I completely misjudged him. The original Ethan was a business prodigy. If my other sister's underwear was worth anything, I'd be stealing it too. Sophia shook her head, convinced her auditory hallucinations were getting worse. Her first priority was to get to a hospital. After shooing me away, she headed for the door, only to run right into Olivia, who was just coming home. Sophia, what are you doing back? The department transferred me back temporarily, so I thought I'd come see mom and dad. Olivia checked her watch. It's almost dinner time. Are you leaving already? I'm going to the hospital. Sophia was still convinced the problem was with her and decided to see a doctor. Are you sick? As the eldest, Olivia had always looked out for her younger sisters. Sophia frowned but decided to tell her about hearing my thoughts. I probably just haven't been getting enough rest. It's likely nothing serious, she said, trying to reassure herself. Don't go just yet, Olivia said. You're not the only one. Sophia stared in astonishment. Olivia, don't tell me you can hear it too? And mom and dad, Olivia added. Sophia took off her glasses and pinched the bridge of her nose, which was starting to ache. She couldn't very well claim the entire family was having a psychotic break, could she? After a moment, Sophia voiced her confusion. What on earth is happening? How should I know? Olivia said, leaning against her car. But I found that his thoughts are surprisingly credible. For instance, I just did a background check at the office, and it turns out there really are a few people who were deliberately planted around me. I just haven't figured out the real threat yet, which is why I came back. I was hoping to get another clue from his thoughts. Olivia's words made Sophia recall the thoughts she'd dismissed earlier. She hadn't told anyone in the family she was being transferred back, so how did Ethan know? And he also knew the police had found a new victim, something that hadn't even been announced publicly. How could he possibly know that? Sophia's thoughts finally landed on what I'd said about the suspect being a scapegoat. Olivia, have you learned anything else from his thoughts? Olivia told her about the surveillance footage from the gala, though she kept the details about the company to herself. Sophia narrowed her eyes, thinking for a moment. It's no use just speculating. We should wait and see if what he thinks actually comes true. Sophia had to admit her sister had a point. That evening, Mr. and Mrs. Heiress came home to find their third daughter, whom they hadn't seen in months. They were so delighted that they cooked a huge feast themselves. I had come home earlier and gone straight to my room for a nap, so when the maid woke me, I stumbled downstairs, still half asleep. At the dinner table, the Heiress family exchanged glances. Dad, Mom, Olivia, Sophia. I called out loudly after taking my seat, just like always. I looked at the spread on the table, which was clearly not made by our cook, and sneered internally. The only people who can get Mom and Dad to cook themselves are my sisters, right? The son who was lost for over a decade and then returned certainly never gets this kind of treatment. The thought made Mr. and Mrs. Heiress shift uncomfortably. Then again, it makes sense. I was gone since I was a kid, so we have no real emotional bond. It's normal that they don't care. That's fine by me. I don't feel anything for this family either, so I won't have to hold back later. And I'm suddenly starting to understand why the original Ethan acted out so much. He was a Heiress too, but he never got any of the care and attention his parents gave his sisters. All his tantrums were probably just a desperate attempt to get them to notice him. To outsiders, he was arrogant and flaunted his status as a Heiress heir, all to convince people, and maybe himself, that his family loved him. He just had a twisted way of showing it. Hearing my thoughts, Mr. and Mrs. Heiress lowered their heads in shame. Ethan, here, have some of this, Mrs. Heiress said, placing a piece of lobster on my plate as if to make up for something. I frowned, then looked up at Mrs. Heiress with a hurt expression. Mom, I'm allergic to shellfish. Don't you remember? A flicker of panic crossed her face, and her hand froze in midair. She was completely at a loss. She didn't even know her own son had a shellfish allergy. I'm so sorry, dear. Mommy's been so busy, it just slipped my mind, she said, dropping the lobster onto Olivia's plate before giving me a piece of brisket instead. Busy my ass. You just never cared enough to remember. Thanks, Mom, I said with a happy smile. though inside I was suspicious. What's with the Heiress family today? Why are they suddenly being so nice to me? This beef isn't poisoned, is it? The other 4 people at the table fell silent. Seeing me just staring at the brisket in my bowl, Sophia casually picked up a piece and ate it. She ate it. Guess it's not poisoned. I then started eating with gusto. Mrs. Heiress let out a quiet sigh of relief, but the guilt in her heart only grew heavier. During the meal, Sophia's phone chimed. She casually played a voice message from a colleague, urging her to return to the lab immediately. There was a new development in the case. I perked up my ears, thinking to myself, this must be when they find the new body parts. But they still won't find the victim's head, so they can't ID the body. The head is actually hidden in an abandoned well in a park not far from where they found the torso, weighed down with rocks. Sophia remained silent, her slender fingers tapping out a reply to her colleague. She wanted to see just how credible my thoughts really were. Meanwhile, Chloe had just gotten back to her private apartment when she received a call from a friend. Girl, I tested those supplements you sent over. They definitely contain a substance that's harmful to the body. The dosage is small, but long-term exposure could cause serious problems. I'd advise stopping their use immediately. Chloe stood before her floor-to-ceiling window, her lips pressed into a thin line, her eyes swirling with emotion. I understand, she said. After hanging up, she stared thoughtfully out at the glittering expanse of the city below. My sunny, cheerful face kept flashing through her mind, along with my inner monologue. At first, she hadn't paid much attention to my thoughts, but after the call about her grandmother collapsing, a seed of doubt had been planted. For her own peace of mind, she'd had her grandmother's usual supplements tested, and to her shock, they were actually tainted. Chloe lowered her gaze, curious as to how I could have known her grandmother's supplements were tampered with. She recalled my mention of a mission at the hospital, and a flicker of interest lit her eyes. You've certainly piqued my curiosity, Ethan Heiress. After dinner, I said goodnight to the family and headed up to my room. I had just flopped onto my bed when my phone rang. I glanced at the screen. The caller ID said, Ryan Peterson. The moment I answered, I was hit by a blast of deafening music and a guy's voice. Ethan, Kevin and I are at Muse right now. That girl from the Astor family just got back from Europe. You want to come? Worried I'd say no, Ryan quickly added, I heard she and Chloe Vanderbilt grew up together. Chloe might even show up later. If this were the original Ethan, he would have bolted out the door the second he heard Chloe's name. But I just narrowed my eyes and lazily rolled over in bed. Nah, I'm not coming. My hand's still messed up and I can't drink. You guys have fun. I hung up before he could argue. Chloe. They use the same excuse every time, and they never get tired of it. Only the original idiot Ethan would come running like a dog to a bone every time he heard her name. And what was the result? He ended up footing the bill every single time. After hanging up, I sat up and started to really think about the original Ethan's friendships. Ryan Peterson, the guy who just called, was one of his so-called friends. His family owned a decent-sized company and was well off, but they were nothing compared to the Vanderbilts or the Heiresses. Besides Ryan, there was another guy named Kevin Miller, a friend Ethan met at school after he came back to the Heiress family. On the surface, both of them were all bro this and bro that, but in reality, they just saw him as an ATM and a social ladder. Ryan had always been desperate to break into the upper echelons of society, showing up at every event frequented by the city's elite heirs. But there are levels to high society, and with their family backgrounds, Ryan and Kevin could never get close to the real power players. After hitting one dead end after another, they finally found their golden goose, the original Ethan. With a Heiress heir in their pocket, Ryan and Kevin repeatedly used Chloe's name to lure Ethan out, using him to get introductions to a few genuine blue bloods. The original Ethan was just too stupid to see their real motives. After figuring it all out, I felt even more disgusted. More money than sense, that's the original Ethan in a nutshell, isn't it? No wonder. The Heiresses give him $30,000 a month in allowance, but the guy's bank account has less than $500. It's no surprise he resorted to selling Amelia's underwear. With 2 leeches like that attached to him, he had to find a way to make cash. Well, starting today, if they manage to get a single cent out of me, I'll consider it my personal failure. After my internal rant, I felt thirsty, so I grabbed a glass and went downstairs for some water. The moment I entered the living room, I saw the 4 of them sitting on the sofa, staring intently at me. What's this about? Are they holding a secret meeting about me behind my back? As if I'd hit a nerve, Mr. Heiress cleared his throat, casually picked up his thermos, and took a sip of his herbal tea. Mrs. Heiress forced a smile. Ethan dear, why aren't you in bed yet? I held up my glass. Just thirsty. Came down for some water. Why are you all still up? Sophia, lounging on the sofa, adjusted her glasses, and said coolly, "The adults are talking. Kids should be in bed." I got my water and walked slowly back upstairs, wanting to look over my shoulder with every step to see what secrets they were keeping. When I reached the landing, I quietly leaned over the banister to eavesdrop. Let's see, are they bad-mouthing me again? I made a total fool of myself in front of Chloe today, and they didn't even yell at me. Something's up. Something is definitely up. In the living room, the family, hearing my thoughts, tactfully changed the subject and started asking Sophia about her work. I listened for a bit longer, but it was boring, so I went back to my room. After they heard my door close, the family let out a collective sigh of relief. "Now, where were we?" Mrs. Heiress whispered. Sophia was staring at her phone. After reading a message from her colleague, her eyes glinted strangely behind her glasses. "According to his thoughts," she said, "they did, in fact, find the victim's head in that abandoned well." A dead silence fell over the living room. After a long moment, Olivia finally spoke. "So, his thoughts can predict the future? And he knows how all of our stories end." Mrs. Heiress looked terrified, grabbing Olivia's arm. "Does that mean we're really all going to end up ruined, just like he said?" Mr. Heiress stood by, his face grim and silent. Olivia patted her mother's hand reassuringly. "Mom, don't panic. Now that we can hear his thoughts, we can prevent these things from happening. We can change our fates. But we've been so cold to Ethan. What if he won't help us? We just have to make sure he never finds out we know," Olivia said. She seemed to have another thought. "And maybe we've misunderstood him. Maybe things weren't always as they seemed. We were just never patient with him, always assuming he was in the wrong. We should try to be more patient from now on." Meanwhile, at the Muse nightclub, Ryan Peterson stared at his phone in annoyance after I hung up on him. "Well, when's he getting here?" "Miss Astor is still waiting in the VIP lounge," the guy next to him asked. Ryan gritted his teeth, his face sour. "He said he's not coming." The other guy panicked. "What are we going to do? We already took her money," he hissed. "What are you worried about? He broke his hand a while back. We'll just tell Miss Astor that. We can get him to come out after school starts." With that, Ryan dragged his friend back to the lounge. In the blink of an eye, summer break was over. I'd been surprisingly well-behaved the whole time, staying home and letting my hand heal. But when I announced I was going back to campus for the start of the semester, Mr. and Mrs. Heiress stared at me in shock. "Ethan, your hand isn't fully healed. Don't rush back to school. Just rest at home a little longer," my mother said. "No way. I've already missed too many classes. If I don't go back now, I'll fall behind," I replied earnestly, putting on my most studious expression, an expression that was, of course, completely undermined by my inner thoughts. If I don't go to school, how am I supposed to pester Chloe and rack up animosity points? I absolutely cannot give Chloe and Julian any space to be alone. I will become a one-man wrecking crew, dedicated to making their lives a living hell. Chloe will hate my guts, and my animosity meter will be maxed out. Hearing the hysterical screaming in my head, Mr. and Mrs. Heiress almost lost their composure. If they weren't afraid of revealing their secret, they would have dragged me to a psychiatrist. In the end, Mr. Heiress just had the driver take me back to campus. I'm a sophomore at NYU's Tisch School of the Arts. I only insisted on coming here, practically threatening to die otherwise, because Chloe was here. The original Ethan wasn't much of a student, but between his good looks and the Heiress family's money, he managed to get in. After dumping my bags in my dorm room, I couldn't wait to head over to the Stern School of Business to find Chloe. It's been over a week. I've really missed her. Just then, the dormant system piped up. "You mean you've missed the $3 billion, right, host?" A smug smile touched my lips. "If you know, you don't have to say it out loud." Just as I stepped out of the dorm building, I saw Chloe walking toward me with another girl and Julian Croft in tow. My eyes lit up, and a jolt of excitement shot through me. I immediately switched into character and bellowed at the approaching group. "Julian, have you no shame? Why are you always hanging around my fiancée?" My voice was loud enough to draw the attention of every student nearby. When everyone realized it was me, the campus's legendary true love crusader, they all stopped to watch the show. My obsession with Chloe was famous throughout NYU. There was even a dedicated thread about the three of us on the campus gossip forum. Every time I made a move, someone would post an update for all the rubberneckers. Right on cue, the onlookers were already pulling out their phones to record. Chloe heard my voice and glanced up at me, her expression neutral, saying nothing. "Here comes your personal disaster again," her friend said, grinning. The moment her friend finished speaking, I was already storming toward them. I snatched whatever Chloe was holding and threw it on the ground. "You're not allowed to carry his things." Then I turned on Julian. "I warned you to stay away from my fiancée." Julian clenched his fists, looking at Chloe with a deeply wronged expression, waiting for her to defend him like she always used to. I just stood there, looking as arrogant as possible. Excellent. A big scene on the very first day of school. With so many people watching, if Chloe doesn't defend Julian now, I'll lose all respect for her. And this way, she's bound to hate me even more, right? I thought smugly, waiting for the system to announce the increase in Chloe's animosity points. Just then, I felt a hand on my back, pulling me away. Here we go. She's about to blow. I'm ready for my next scene. But to my surprise, Chloe wasn't angry that I'd publicly humiliated Julian. Instead, she bent down and picked up the bag I'd thrown to the ground. What's in that bag? Gold bars. Is it more important than your future husband? Aren't you supposed to call me unreasonable and then heartlessly demand we break off the engagement? Come on, Chloe, grow a spine. Yell at me. Yell at me. Chloe slowly stood up, her cool expression betraying none of the turmoil inside her. Listening to my incessant mental chatter, she knew that if she were any less composed, she would have already snapped. She turned to face me, her gaze cool. This is from my grandmother. For you. Her clear voice hung in the air as she held out the bag. I was completely stunned. How am I supposed to play this scene now? I was so focused on racking up animosity points that I didn't even look at what she was holding. I just assumed she was carrying something for Julian. I stared at the bag Chloe was holding out, my mind racing to figure out my next move. Just then, Julian stepped forward. His voice wasn't loud, but it was clear enough for all the onlookers to hear. That's a gift your grandmother picked out especially for you, Ethan. Even if you don't like it, you shouldn't just throw it on the ground, should you? I was still trying to figure out how to salvage the scene when Julian's cleverly pointed words made me want to give him a high five. Instead, I immediately turned my attack back on him. Whether I throw it or not is none of your business. Why don't you mind your own business and stay away from my fiancé? Hearing my increasingly reckless words, Chloe frowned slightly, even though she knew I was doing it for some mission. She had no desire to defend Julian, but for some reason, she didn't want to see me continue to destroy my own reputation. So, before I could say another word, she grabbed my hand and pulled me away. Julian hadn't expected Chloe to just drag me away. He was left standing there, completely baffled by her behavior toward me. Meanwhile, Chloe pulled me toward a less crowded area, though not before several people snapped photos and posted them to the campus forum. Why did you drag me away? Are you protecting him? Don't forget, we're engaged. When you're out playing couple with Julian, do you ever stop to think about my feelings? I ripped my hand from her grasp and launched into a tirade. I remember Chloe hates it when I bring up the engagement, but after a moment, she still hadn't responded. Why isn't she reacting? I should have grabbed a bite to eat before starting this. I'm starving. Can you please hurry up and get on with the scene? The screaming in my head was making Chloe's ears ring. She turned away, pinching the bridge of her nose. Stop bothering Julian, she said, finally getting her complicated emotions under control. Her dark eyes stared straight into mine, and if you looked closely, you could see a hint of resignation hidden within them. Hearing this, I almost wept with joy. Finally, since I got here, this is the first time she's actually followed the script. I quickly shifted my expression to one of utter heartbreak. So you do have feelings for him. Then what am I to you? What does our engagement even mean? Then, my sadness vanished, replaced by a snarl. So you're going to protect him, is that it? Fine. Then let me make one thing clear. As long as we are engaged, Julian will never know a moment of peace. From this day forward, every time I see him near you, I will make his life a living hell, unless you get your grandmother to agree to end our engagement. I didn't give her a chance to respond. With a look of tragic fury, I spun around and stormed off toward the dining hall. Okay, mission accomplished for today. My performance must have been Oscar-worthy. I bet Chloe is completely stunned. Time to get some food, then I'll get back to work. The sooner I finish, the sooner I can retire. Chloe stood frozen, listening to my departing thoughts, a look of exasperation crossing her face. She was starting to regret her decision not to break off the engagement and instead play along with my ridiculous drama. After I was gone, Chloe looked down at the bag in her hand, sighed in resignation, and walked off in the opposite direction. Once she was out of sight, a figure popped up from the bushes. It was a guy with a just got the juiciest gossip look on his face, excitedly wiping his phone screen. He opened his iMessage. Julian, you have to see the video I just sent you. After watching Chloe drag me away, Julian had returned to his dorm in a daze. The memory of what he'd seen at the hospital, combined with this, filled him with a growing sense of unease. He had always believed he was special to Chloe. Even though he was just an orphan the Vanderbilts had taken in, they had known each other since they were children, and he believed their bond was unique. Even though Chloe had been away for 15 of the last 18 years, Julian was convinced he held a special place in her heart. The sound of a notification snapped Julian out of his thoughts. He picked up his phone and opened iMessage to a message from a friend, Leo. He was about to ignore it when a second message popped up. Chloe still cares about you. Seeing that, Julian immediately opened the chat and played the video Leo had sent. When he heard Chloe telling me to stop bothering him, the anxiety that had been gripping him finally subsided. A smile touched his lips. He didn't even care when he heard my threats to keep targeting him. He just replayed the part with Chloe's words over and over. Satisfied, Julian saved the video. He knew it. Chloe did care about him. Meanwhile, I sprinted to the dining hall. After getting my food, I happily found an empty table. I had just picked up my fork when someone shoved the back of my head, hard. Caught off guard, my face nearly plunged right into my tray of food. Who was that? I growled through gritted teeth. I hear you were giving Julian a hard time again today, a girl's voice said from behind me. I gripped my fork tightly and turned around. A group of 5 or 6 guys and girls had surrounded me, all of them looking at me with ill intent. The girl in the lead was petite, with curly hair and a row of ear piercings, looking every bit the punk. The system quickly supplied her identity: Jessica Morgan, daughter of the Morgan family, and, according to the original story, Julian Croft's most loyal simp. I quickly scanned my memories. This Jessica had targeted the original Ethan plenty of times. After processing this, I smirked and ran my tongue over my teeth. The original Ethan may have been afraid of her, but I wasn't. I took a deep breath and said coldly, "If you have something to say it. If not, get lost." I was so hungry I was seeing spots, and my patience was non-existent. Jessica's eyes darkened in disbelief. The guy who used to cower before her like a mouse before a cat was actually talking to her like this? I had no time for them and didn't care what they were saying. I turned back around and focused on my food. Maybe it was my dismissive attitude, or maybe it was what I'd said, but just as I was about to take a bite of a pork rib, someone flipped my tray. Food went everywhere, splattering all over the table, the floor, and my clean clothes. "I was talking to you. What the hell is your attitude?" Jessica screamed, her face contorted with rage. The commotion drew a crowd, and of course people started filming. I sat there, still clutching my fork, my gaze dark as I stared at the wasted food. For someone as hungry as I was, this was the equivalent of lighting the fuse on a bomb. I might have looked calm on the outside, but the system knew this was the calm before my storm. Jessica slammed her hand on the table. "Are you deaf? I'm talking to you," she snarled. I took a breath, let out a quiet, contemptuous snort, dropped my fork, and slowly raised my eyes to meet hers. When our eyes met, Jessica's heart skipped a beat. The fear and anxiety that usually filled my eyes had been replaced by a cold, hard glare. If I didn't look exactly the same, she would have sworn I was a different person. "Didn't you want to talk? Let's go somewhere else," I said, my eyes cold but a smirk playing on my lips. My stare seemed to daze her for a second, but she quickly recovered. She glanced around, realized some things were best done in private, and led me away. A video of Jessica leading me away was already up on the campus forum. Meanwhile, Chloe came out of her bathroom, towel drying her hair, and heard her friend, who was sitting at her desk, say, "Jessica really lives up to her reputation as a loyal simp. The moment Ethan says a bad word about Julian, she's off to settle the score. She even dragged him away somewhere. What do you think she's planning?" Chloe froze, towel in hand. "How do you know that?" Her friend turned around, waving her phone. "There's a video on the forum." Chloe just said, "Oh," and went back to her own desk. Her friend leaned back in her chair, her face full of gossip. "You're not worried at all? He is your fiancé after all." Chloe didn't answer, her gaze distant. A moment later, she stood up, grabbed her jacket, and headed for the door. "Where are you going?" her friend asked. "I have to take care of something," Chloe replied. The backstage area of the school auditorium was usually deserted, which had made it the perfect hangout for Jessica and her cronies. As they led me there, memories of the original Ethan being beaten up in this very spot flashed through my mind. I tilted my head, my eyes landing on the girl with bleached blonde hair walking behind Jessica. I remembered her. She was the one who'd led the beatdown on the original Ethan. I lowered my gaze, a cold glint in my eyes, and began to calculate who I would start with. "Didn't I tell you to be polite to Julian and stop causing trouble for him?" Jessica said, stopping in front of me, her voice cold. As she spoke, her friends surrounded me, malicious smirks on their faces. I raised an eyebrow, gave them a cool, dismissive glance, and said, "You did, and?" Jessica's eyes widened in disbelief. "And? You're asking me? And? Was the last lesson I taught you too gentle? Did you already forget my warning?" Jessica's face turned livid. She had assumed that after her last warning, I'd be at least a little intimidated. But the boy in front of her was completely unafraid, even radiating a certain hostility. I sneered, my eyes filled with contempt as I looked at her. You know, I heard you're nothing but Julian's pathetic, loyal lapdog. If you've got so much nerve, why don't you just win him over yourself? Oh, I forgot. He's too busy chasing my fiancée to even notice you exist. I laughed, my words deliberately chosen to provoke her. And just as I'd planned, her expression grew even uglier. I lifted my chin and continued in the same taunting tone. Everyone in New York knows Chloe and I are engaged, but Julian keeps chasing her anyway, even though he knows she's taken. Shut up, Jessica roared, raising her hand to strike me. A cold fury surged within me, and I braced myself to fight back, when a sharp, clear voice cut through the air. Jessica, you lay one finger on him, and I swear. Chloe appeared, silhouetted against the light. Jessica's fist froze in midair. She turned to face Chloe, her eyes filled with resentment and defiance. I blinked, surprised. What was Chloe doing here? As she approached, my would-be attackers instinctively backed away. Chloe walked right up to me, her eyes scanning me over, as if checking for injuries. I pressed my lips together and started grumbling internally. So annoying. Why did she have to show up? I was just about to teach these idiots a lesson. Well, great. Now I have to go back to playing my part. Hearing my thoughts, Chloe relaxed. But my resentful tone also made her want to laugh. She'd been so worried I was being bullied that she'd rushed over without even drying her hair, and instead of a thank you, she gets my resentment. Jessica, also surprised by Chloe's arrival, lowered her fist and stared at her. In that brief pause, my mind raced. Then, in a flash, I darted behind Chloe, grabbing the fabric of her shirt. Chloe, you're finally here. Any later and you would have been planning my funeral. Jessica was sent by Julian to rough me up. Now do you see? He's a total two-faced snake. He acts all innocent around you, but behind your back, he sends his goons to beat me up. My mouth ran like a machine gun, and my mind was just as busy. Another chance to slander Julian in front of Chloe. I'm working so hard at this. Just hate me already, Chloe. Chloe remained silent, letting me continue my rant. It was Jessica who exploded. You're talking nonsense. I'm the one who can't stand you. This has nothing to do with Julian. I peeked out from behind Chloe and repeated Jessica's words in a mocking tone. Nothing to do with Julian? Wow, such devotion. I'm impressed. Haven't you ever heard the saying? A simp to the end is a simp with no friends. What are you so proud of? After everything you've done for him, has Julian ever given you the time of day? You're a simp and you don't even know it. I wonder if you'd still be such a loyal lapdog if you knew that in the future. He'll use you as a shield, which will lead to the Morgan family's bankruptcy and you ending up in prison. Hearing this, Chloe raised a subtle eyebrow and shot a meaningful look at the boy hiding behind her. My words had sent Jessica into a blind rage. Forgetting Chloe was even there, she swung her hand, aiming to slap me. Chloe's eyes darkened. She shot out a hand and caught Jessica's wrist, her gaze heavy. As a Vanderbilt, one of New York's most powerful families, Chloe possessed an innate, intimidating aura. Without saying a word, she could exude a crushing pressure. The moment Jessica met Chloe's gaze, all her bravado vanished as if doused by a bucket of cold water, replaced by a deep-seated fear. She tried to pull her hand away, but Chloe's grip was like iron. Standing behind Chloe, I couldn't see her expression, but I could feel the icy aura radiating from her. Chloe, you've known Julian your whole life. You know what kind of person he is. Are you just going to let this loser slander him like this? Jessica demanded, her voice filled with indignation. What does that have to do with me? Chloe said, flinging Jessica's hand away, her voice devoid of emotion. Jessica clutched her throbbing wrist. Julian is in love with you. Can't you see that? She spat. If you love him too, you should break off your engagement with this nobody, and stop trampling all over Julian's feelings. Nice. A guilt trip. I should have thought of that. I should have been the one to say that to Chloe. I'll make a note of it for next time. Just then, a warm hand grabbed my wrist, and I heard Chloe's voice. Mind your own business, Jessica, and don't let me catch you bothering Ethan again. With that, Chloe dragged me out of the auditorium, leaving Jessica and her crew staring after us in stunned silence. It was the first time any of them had ever seen Chloe defend me. Watching us leave, Jessica was so furious she kicked over a nearby table. Spread the word, she snarled. Anyone who gets me a photo or video of Ethan Heiress getting his ass kicked gets a cash reward. Outside the auditorium, Chloe let go of my arm and walked away without a word. I stood there and rolled my eyes at her retreating back. Who do you think you are? Why should I listen to you? I scoffed, then turned and headed in the opposite direction. I thought back to Jessica's threats, a cold glint in my eye. Jessica, Jessica. The grass is already growing on the graves of people who've dared to mess with me. 2 days later, as the sun began to set, I changed into a black tracksuit and a baseball cap and made my way to a bar called Nightfall. I'd gotten intel from the system that this was Jessica's favorite haunt, where she and her rich friends liked to hang out. Once there, I paid a waiter to deliver a message to her. I waited a few minutes as the sky grew dark and the alley behind the bar was plunged into shadow. I leaned against the wall, one hand in my pocket, just as the streetlights flickered on. A moment later, I heard hurried footsteps approaching. A small smile played on my lips as I pulled the brim of my cap down lower. "Are you the one the waiter told me about?" Jessica asked, stopping a few feet away from me. She eyed my all-black outfit suspiciously. "Who are you? Why would Julian send you to meet me?" I chuckled, deliberately lowering my voice. "If I hadn't said that, how else would I have gotten you to come out here?" Confusion flickered across her face for a second before it was replaced by rage. "You're messing with me?" she snarled. I straightened up, my cast-covered hand hidden in my baggy sweatshirt, my other hand in my pocket. I tilted my head and looked at her, my voice dripping with provocation. "I am. What are you going to do about it?" Faced with this person whose face and identity were a mystery, and hearing their taunts, Jessica let out a humorless laugh. She pushed her tongue against the inside of her cheek. "Do you have any idea who I am? You must have a death wish, coming here looking for a fight." I just said, "Oh," and then added mockingly, "Julian's little lapdog, right? Who else could it be?" Before she could argue, I let out a long, drawn-out "oh," and then corrected myself. My mistake. His loyal little lapdog. Jessica had never denied her one-sided crush on Julian. She didn't even care that people called her a simp, because in her mind, everything she did was just an expression of her sincere feelings for him. But for some reason, hearing this stranger call her a lapdog, a sudden, inexplicable rage surged within her. Jessica snapped. "You're dead!" she screamed, lunging at me with a wild punch. This was exactly the reaction I wanted. Now that she was enraged and reckless, it was easy for me to dodge her punch and grab her wrist as it flew past my ear. As a Morgan, Jessica had been trained in self-defense since she was a child. Her fighting skills were her pride and the source of her arrogance. The fact that I had so easily dodged her attack left her genuinely stunned. But I didn't give her a chance to recover. I drove my fist into her stomach. She doubled over with a pained groan. Before she could catch her breath, I followed up with a punch to her jaw. The impact and pain made her world go white, and she stumbled sideways. She staggered back, crashing into a parked scooter. "Weren't you so tough a minute ago?" I taunted from a few feet away. "Why are you on the ground like a stray dog now?" Jessica glared up at me, trying to get a clear look at my face. All she could think about was my taunt, calling her a dog. Her eyes darkened, and she glanced at the corner of the alley, where a few empty beer bottles lay on the ground. Her rage intensified. She grabbed a discarded helmet from the ground and hurled it at me, then snatched up one of the bottles and charged. I dodged the helmet, but when I saw the bottle swinging toward me, I instinctively raised my other arm to block. The bottle shattered against my cast with a loud crack. Seeing the cast, something clicked in Jessica's mind, but before she could process it, another kick sent her stumbling back. The fleeting thought was gone. She glared at me and sneered. "Oh, so you do have two hands. I thought you were a cripple." I brushed the glass shards off my sleeve and scoffed at her taunt. "I only need one hand to beat you like a dog." With a curse, she charged at me again. The dim alley filled with the sounds of a struggle and pained cries. Soon, the sounds of the fight died down, replaced by a woman's whimpers. I planted my foot on Jessica's stomach and leaned down over her. The dim, yellow light only illuminated half my face, but she was so dazed she couldn't have recognized me anyway. "This was just a small lesson," I said, my voice low and menacing. "If you keep bothering Julian, I'll do this every single time I see you." I left her with that deliberately misleading threat, gave her one last contemptuous look as she lay on the ground, and walked away. With the system's help, I avoided all the security cameras and hailed a cab to head back to campus. I was about to give the driver the address when I noticed that my newly replaced cast was cracked again. I cursed under my breath and told the driver, "Change of plans. Take me to the hospital." At the hospital, I faced the doctor with an awkward smile. "I really didn't get into a fight," I insisted, holding up 3 fingers in a solemn vow. Just as I said it, the doctor pulled a shard of glass out of my cast with a pair of tweezers. I immediately shut my mouth. The doctor looked at me with exasperation. "You don't want this hand to heal, do you? A few more incidents like this, and it never will." I shook my head meekly. I just fell off a bike, I mumbled, not very convincingly. The doctor gave me a look that clearly said, "Do you really expect me to believe that?" I decided it was best to just shut up. After he'd reset my cast and given me another lecture, I practically fled the treatment room and sprinted for the elevator. The elevator doors opened, and I came face to face with Olivia, who was helping a handsome man in a business suit. My sister and I stared at each other, completely shocked to run into each other here, at this time. "What are you doing here?" we both asked at the same time. The man with Olivia looked back and forth between us, confused. "Ms. Heiress, who is this?" he asked. The moment he spoke, Olivia let go of his arm and pulled me aside. "Why are you at the hospital at this hour? Shouldn't you be at your dorm?" Olivia asked, her brow furrowed, sounding like a concerned parent. I blinked innocently. My stomach was upset, so I came to get some medicine. Olivia looked skeptical and was about to press me further when my voice popped into her head. "That guy my sister was just holding on to. He must be the mole her frenemy planted in her company, right?" Olivia thought. When was I holding on to him? Wait. Her eyes flickered as she subtly glanced back at the man. Her own assistant was a mole? Just as the thought registered, Olivia fought the urge to question me further. Before she could decide what to say, we both heard a strange noise. We looked over just in time to see a figure duck into the stairwell. Olivia frowned. "Stay right here," she said, before heading toward the stairwell. I obediently stayed put, a small smile playing on my lips. "Looks like someone's up to something. Let's see what kind of scheme it is this time." Hearing my thoughts, Olivia was puzzled, but she checked the stairwell anyway. The figure was gone. She had to turn back. She then called another assistant to stay with the first one and drove me back to campus herself. During the drive, Olivia was tempted several times to ask me about her assistant, but she held back, not wanting to reveal her secret. The car stopped in front of the school, and just as she turned to say something, I had already opened the door and jumped out. "It's late, Olivia. You should get home," I yelled, running off without a backward glance. Olivia watched me go and let out a long sigh. Back at the dorm, I sweet-talked the RA into letting me in, quickly washed up, and collapsed into bed, completely unaware that the internet was already on fire. The next morning, Chloe was woken by the sound of an iMessage notification. She opened her phone to see a message from Julian at the top of her screen. "Chloe, check Twitter. Something's happened with Ethan." The message instantly chased away most of her sleepiness. She closed iMessage and opened Twitter. The first thing she saw was the top trending topic, complete with a photo. #NYC Heiress's fiancé spotted at hospital late at night with mystery woman. Rumors of abortion swirl #. Below the explosive headline was a photo of a man and a woman in profile. My face was clearly visible, but Olivia was standing directly under a light, and the overexposure made her features blurry. That didn't stop the internet from speculating, of course. The tweet already had tens of thousands of replies. "NYC Heiress? Just say Chloe Vanderbilt's name at this point. The rich really do live differently. Is this what high society is like? A world us peasants can only dream of. Is Ethan Heiress just too greedy? He's engaged to Chloe Vanderbilt and he's still not satisfied, so he's hooking up with some other woman? How did this guy pull that off? The woman is wearing couture. She's clearly someone important. What does she see in him? You guys know how he is. Ethan has pulled all sorts of crazy stunts to force this marriage. This is probably just another one of his schemes. Chloe Vanderbilt might be the first woman in history to have her reputation ruined by her fiancé before the wedding even happens. When is she going to break off this engagement? I can't stand to see a good woman dragged down like this. Julian sat at his desk, scrolling through the comments, a smile playing on his lips. He lowered his gaze, his smile widening. If word of this got back to Mrs. Vanderbilt, she would surely start to despise me too. An idea struck him. He opened his iMessage chat with Chloe and typed, "This thing on Twitter is getting pretty big. Your grandmother has probably already seen it. You should go find Ethan. I'll head to your house and try to calm her down." On the other end, Chloe looked at the photo with a blank expression, not even bothering to open the comments before closing Twitter. She saw Julian's message and stared at it for a long moment, lost in thought. Finally, she replied with 4 words, "Stay out of it." The notification chimed, and Julian immediately opened the message. Seeing her cold reply, he smiled with satisfaction. It didn't matter what she said. The fact that she replied at all meant she'd seen the news, and that meant she would go back to hating me just like before. Meanwhile, I was still sound asleep when I was jolted awake by my phone ringing incessantly. I cracked open an eye, saw it was an unknown number, and immediately declined the call. But the caller was persistent and immediately called back. "Who is this? Why do you keep calling me? Are you crazy?" I grumbled, answering the phone. There was a brief, dead silence on the other end. Then, an enraged voice screamed, "You didn't even save my number." That shout was enough to wake me up a bit more. I pulled the phone away from my ear to look at the screen, and the system's voice helpfully informed me that this was my fourth sister, Amelia. But I've always had a terrible temper when I first wake up, and I didn't care who it was. "Is your phone number my bank account password? If not, why would I save it? Didn't your mother ever teach you that calling someone over and over is incredibly rude? If someone hangs up on you, it means they don't want to talk. Get it?" I yelled, completely stunning Amelia on the other end of the line. In the past, no matter how wild I acted outside, I always had a certain level of respect or fear for my family. I never would have dared to speak to her like that. She was stunned for a few seconds, then snarled, "Do you have any idea who you're talking to? I'm your sister." But Amelia hadn't called to argue about that. She'd called because of the Twitter trend. "Can you please stop embarrassing the Heiress family? You're not some country bumpkin anymore. Can't you act with a little more decency? Go on Twitter and see what you've done. Have you no shame?" Of all my sisters, Amelia despised me the most, so she never held back, always saying the cruelest things she could think of. I was already cranky from being woken up, and her baseless accusations sent my anger through the roof. As she continued to berate me, I forced down my anger, sat up, and opened Twitter to see what she was talking about. The moment I saw the photo of me and Olivia at the hospital, I immediately remembered the shadowy figure from the night before. I had known someone was taking pictures at the time, which is why I had deliberately turned to give them a clearer shot. My mission was to increase my animosity points, so no matter what they did with the photo, it would only help me. Still, Amelia's habit of blaming me for everything without even trying to find out the truth really pissed me off. I closed Twitter and yelled back into the phone, "Are you brain dead? Or just blind? You can't even recognize your own sister in a photograph? You should get your eyes checked." I then hung up, blocked her number, and turned off my phone. After that flurry of activity, I angrily threw my phone onto my bed, only then noticing that someone else was in the room. Leo Jenkins was standing awkwardly in the doorway, his hands still on the knob, as if he'd been about to close the door. He was wearing a pair of faded jeans and a t-shirt with a stretched-out collar, clothes he'd clearly had for a long time. My gaze traveled down to his sneakers, the soles of which were starting to come unglued. My stare must have been too obvious, because he instinctively tried to hide his feet, then lowered his head in embarrassment and walked silently to the empty bunk. I looked away, having no intention of talking to him, and went back to sleep. Hearing my steady breathing, Leo's tense body slowly relaxed. Meanwhile, Amelia, furious at being hung up on, tried to call me back, only to discover I had blocked her number. "Fine, just fine. You've really got some nerve," she fumed. Having failed with me, she called Olivia instead. I woke up slowly around noon. I glanced at the opposite bunk and saw that it was now made up, but I was the only one in the room. I sat there for a moment, dazed, then remembered what Amelia had said that morning. I turned on my phone and opened Twitter, wanting to see the trending topic about me for myself. But it was gone. Instead, buried among dozens of other posts, I saw a new one. #Morgan Heiress assaulted at nightclub. Family offers huge reward for information #. I clicked my tongue, quickly skimmed the tweet, and was about to climb out of bed when Leo walked in. Our eyes met again. After a moment, he said timidly, Ethan, there's someone downstairs looking for you." "Who is it?" I asked, climbing down from my bunk. It's Chloe Vanderbilt from the business school." I was surprised, but then I remembered the morning's Twitter drama and figured she was here to chew me out. The thought that Chloe would hate me even more because of the Twitter scandal filled me with glee. I quickly washed up, changed, and headed out of the dorm with a spring in my step. Watching me leave, Leo could see how much I liked Chloe and thought to himself that I probably wasn't the kind of person to do the things they were saying online. Downstairs, Chloe was standing in front of the dorm, holding the bag I'd thrown on the ground earlier. She was a striking sight. With her family status, her stunning looks, and her genius-level intellect, she was one of the most famous people on campus. Her presence in front of the men's dorm immediately drew a crowd. When I got downstairs and saw her surrounded by onlookers, I couldn't help but sigh internally. She really is the main character. Even the back of her head is beautiful enough to make a man sin. It's a shame. If it weren't for the $3 billion, I genuinely want to sleep with her. Hearing my thoughts, Chloe slowly turned to look at me. It wasn't the first time she'd heard such audacious things from my mind. I walked up to her, bracing myself for the coming storm, my next performance already planned out. But, to my disappointment, she didn't demand we break off the engagement, nor did she treat me with her usual disgust. "This is from my grandmother," she said coolly, holding out the bag. I blinked, looking at the pristine bag she was offering. She must have replaced the one I'd thrown on the ground. I didn't take it, This isn't something Julian rejected, is it? I sneered. Feeling that wasn't enough, I added, Chloe, I may love you, but I have my dignity. If you keep messing around with Julian, I'll find ways to get back at you. I've given her such an obvious opening. Now she should be coming at me about the photo on Twitter, right? Even though the woman in the picture is my sister, as long as I don't say anything, Chloe won't know. She'll think I'm a cheater, and she'll hate me even more. This is perfect. When I find out who leaked that photo, I'm sending them a thank you gift. Chloe lowered her eyes, quietly listening to my gleeful thoughts. She was genuinely surprised to learn that the woman in the photo was Olivia. So, the photo scandal wasn't a stunt he'd pulled himself? My grandmother wants you to come home for dinner. If you want to know if the gift is special, you can ask her yourself, Chloe said, her voice cool and unreadable. She shoved the bag into my hands, then gestured with her chin toward a black SUV parked down the street. Let's go. Seeing that things weren't going according to plan, my mind raced for an excuse. I have class today, I said. I really didn't want to go with her. The way her grandmother looked at me, with such adoration, I found it hard to be cruel to the kind old woman. Chloe crossed her arms and looked at me, her expression calm. In the past, I would have killed for an invitation like this, but now I was trying to get out of it. I've seen your class schedule, she said flatly. The unspoken message was clear. That excuse wasn't going to work. Damn it, when did she start paying so much attention to me? I haven't even seen my own schedule, and she has? What other excuse can I use? Hearing my frantic thoughts, Chloe couldn't help but smile. She turned away to hide it. When she turned back, she just raised an eyebrow at me. I gritted my teeth and followed her to the car. She didn't say another word to me the entire drive to the Vanderbilt estate. I just stared out the window, my mind a tangled mess. For some reason, ever since I saw her grandmother in the hospital, I'd had this strange feeling nagging at me, as if I'd forgotten something important. We're here. I don't know how much time had passed, but Chloe's voice pulled me from my thoughts. I got out of the car and stared, dumbfounded, at the building before me. It looked like a Gilded Age palace. Chloe handed the keys to a valet and said, "Let's go. My grandmother is waiting." "You live in a palace?" I blurted out. Chloe paused, a flicker of something in her eyes. She said, choosing not to point out my slip-up. She didn't want to startle me. I was secretly impressed. No wonder they called her the Princess of New York. With a family like hers, she certainly lived up to the title. Chloe pricked up her ears, waiting to hear what I'd think next. But for once, my mind was quiet. We walked in side by side, and just as we rounded a large decorative screen in the entryway, we saw Julian walking toward us. I raised an eyebrow, a malicious glint in my eye. That explains it. I was wondering why Chloe was suddenly so willing to bring me home with her. Walking beside me, Chloe shot me a confused look. The photo scandal was all over Twitter, so her grandmother must have seen it. Chloe brings me here, Julian is here too. Are they planning some kind of tribunal? I see. This is where they plan to ambush me. Okay, let me think. How should I play this? Should I deny everything? Or just confess? I was busy brainstorming ways to make Mrs. Vanderbilt hate me, too. Listening to my frantic plotting, a vein throbbed in Chloe's temple. Are all guys' minds this hyperactive? She wondered. She hadn't done a thing, and I'd already spun this entire conspiracy theory. Julian approached, a gentle smile on his face, but before he could speak, Chloe took my hand. Are you determined to self-destruct? Do you have a death wish? Chloe tried to ignore my inner voice, her grip on my hand tightening. Let's go. We shouldn't keep my grandmother waiting, she said, and then led me straight past Julian. The smile vanished from Julian's face. His hands, hanging at his sides, clenched into tight fists as he struggled to hide his emotions. He stood there for a moment, composing himself, then smoothed his expression and turned toward the garden. In the garden, Mrs. Vanderbilt, dressed in an elegant maroon dress, was happily trimming a rose bush, a small pair of shears in her hand. An elderly man, also with graying hair, stood beside her. "Grandma, we're back," Chloe said warmly, leading me over. Mrs. Vanderbilt turned, and the moment she saw me, her face lit up with a smile. "Ethan dear, you're here." I wasn't sure if she knew about the photo, so I decided to play it safe. "Hello, Grandma," I said meekly. She came over, pulled me away from Chloe, and said to the old man beside her, "Quick, have the staff bring out the frozen yogurt from the freezer. It's Ethan's favorite." Hearing frozen yogurt, I was taken aback. How did she know I liked frozen yogurt? The original Ethan hated it. The question that had been nagging at me was now screaming in my mind. "Grandma, how did you?" I started to ask, but just then, Julian walked over. "Grandma," he said with a smile, "Mrs. Heiress is here." We all turned to see my mother walking toward us, her face a mask of fury. She stopped in front of me and commanded, "Kneel!" My mother's sudden appearance surprised both me and Chloe. Mrs. Vanderbilt, however, shot a meaningful look at Julian before her smile faded. She pulled me behind her protectively. "Mrs. Heiress," she said, her voice firm, "even if you intend to discipline your son, there is a time and a place." Her tone toward my mother was a complete 180 from how she'd just been with me. "Exactly. Telling me to kneel the moment you open your mouth? Wake up, this isn't the Middle Ages. If you want me to kneel, you'd better be worthy of it. Do you think you're the Queen of England or something?" I thought, not about to pass up such a golden opportunity to stir up trouble. Chloe pinched the bridge of her nose, wishing I would just shut up. "You dare talk back to me?" My mother was furious. She had received an anonymous text with the photo of me and the mystery woman at the hospital, along with the salacious captions from the online articles. The photo had been doctored. The woman's face was blurred, as if to protect her identity, while mine was crystal clear, like a high-definition headshot. The Heiress family wasn't nearly as powerful as the Vanderbilts, and when Chloe and I got engaged, everyone in my family knew we were marrying up. I'd already dragged the Heiress family name through the mud, and my mother was always walking on eggshells, terrified of offending the Vanderbilts and facing the consequences. Facing her furious glare, I instinctively ducked behind Mrs. Vanderbilt, my mind already spinning. Perfect timing. I was just wondering how to get Mrs. Vanderbilt to hate me, too. After this little outburst from my mother, she'll definitely think the entire Heiress family is a bunch of unreasonable psychos, and she'll despise me by association. Animosity points. Here I come. Seeing me hide, my mother grew even more furious. She pointed a finger at me. "Get out here. You embarrass us in public, and now you dare to hide behind Mrs. Vanderbilt? You've brought nothing but shame to the Heiress name." Mrs. Vanderbilt pulled me closer behind her, her expression hardening as she tapped her cane on the ground. "Mrs. Heiress, when it comes to matters between the children, we as elders should get the facts straight before we act. Demanding Ethan kneel the moment you arrive. This is the Vanderbilt estate, not your family's private court." Her words were spoken softly, but they carried an undeniable authority. I peeked out from behind her, deciding to add more fuel to the fire. In my most wounded tone, I said the most inflammatory thing I could think of. "Mom, how can you believe some anonymous photo over your own son? The woman in that picture is my sister, Olivia. She was driving me back to school last night when we ran into each other at the hospital. The person who sent you that photo is the real enemy, the one who wants to make our family a laughingstock. I'm deliberately dragging Olivia into this. My mother will definitely think I'm just making excuses, which will only make her angrier. As for the person who sent the photo, it was probably that snake Julian. Perfect chance to throw some mud his way. 2 birds, 1 stone. I'm a genius." The moment I finished speaking, an eerie silence fell over the garden. My mother froze, her rage extinguished as if doused by a bucket of ice water. "Olivia?" She tried to recall the blurry photo. The woman's build, her posture, it did look a bit like her eldest daughter. A flash of understanding crossed Chloe's cool eyes as she shot a subtle glance at Julian, whose gentle smile had become somewhat rigid. Just as I was reveling in my own brilliant scheme, a strange, mechanical voice echoed in my head. "Warning, tragedy node, familial estrangement and collapse, detected. Correction opportunity available. Host, please proceed." I was dumbfounded. What the hell? A correction opportunity? Wasn't my job to rack up animosity points? Before I could process it, my mother had already pulled out her phone, dialed Olivia's number, and put it on speaker. "Olivia," she asked urgently the moment the call connected, "were you with Ethan last night? Did you two go to the hospital?" Olivia's calm voice came through the speaker. "Yes, his cast was cracked, so I took him to the hospital to get it reset, and then I drove him back to school." "Mom, is something wrong?" The truth was out. My mother's face flushed, then paled. Her hand holding the phone trembled as she stood there, mortified and unsure what to do. I watched the scene unfold, not with satisfaction, but with a growing sense of irritation. My entire plan was ruined. Just then, the voice in my head returned. "Tragedy node, familial estrangement correction successful. Reward world authenticity plus 5%. Host, doesn't the sun feel especially bright today?" I was speechless. I could feel my $3 billion slipping through my fingers. The whole fiasco ended awkwardly with Mrs. Vanderbilt's mediation. My mother left in disgrace, and Julian quickly made an excuse to leave as well. I, on the other hand, was forced to stay by Mrs. Vanderbilt and eat an entire tub of the frozen yogurt I did, in fact, love. Back at my dorm, I lay in bed and started to seriously analyze this suddenly benevolent system. Could it be? Its real purpose wasn't for me to be hated, but for me to fix all these tragedies? To test this theory, I decided to use my father, who was destined for the ICU, as a guinea pig. In the original story, my father makes a disastrous business deal, getting swindled by a rival company. The company's finances collapse, he works himself into a critical illness, and someone eventually pulls his oxygen plug. I found out he had a crucial negotiation for that very deal the next day. This is it. All I have to do is barge in, cause a huge scene, and ruin this deal. My father will be so furious he'll disown me, and my animosity points will go through the roof. The next day, I stormed into the conference room at Heiress Corp, full of righteous fury. I kicked the door open, ignoring the shocked faces of everyone in the room. I marched right up to my father, held out my hand, and yelled in the most arrogant voice I could muster, "Dad, give me $1 million. I want to buy a sports car." My father's face instantly darkened. The man across the table from him, a polite-looking, middle-aged man, watched the unfolding drama with amusement. "Yes, that's the look. Yell at me. Throw me out. If this deal falls through, I'll be one step closer to my $3 billion. I was screaming internally, but on the outside, I escalated my performance, throwing a full-blown tantrum on the conference room floor. "If you don't give me the money, I'm not leaving. I'll stay right here and scream until everyone knows what a terrible, abusive father you are." Just then, the polite-looking man chuckled. He adjusted his glasses and said to my father, "Mr. Heiress, your son is certainly spirited. It seems today isn't a good time for our discussion. Perhaps we can reschedule." With that, he stood up to leave. I was ecstatic. It worked. But just as the man turned to leave, a sudden, bizarre impulse struck me. I yelled at his back, "Stop right there. You fraud. You think you can swindle my father's company? Did you think I wouldn't recognize you just because you're using a fake name? When are you going to pay back the money you owe from that casino in Vegas?" I was just spouting nonsense, trying to make the situation even more chaotic. To my utter shock, the man froze, his face draining of all color. He whipped around, his eyes wide with panic. My father, ever the shrewd businessman, immediately sensed something was wrong. He gave a subtle look to his assistant, who understood and quietly called security. In the end, the so-called business partner was exposed as a corporate con artist sent by our family's biggest rival. Not only did my father avoid a loss, but my accidental accusation had saved him from a massive disaster. That night, I got another notification from the system. Tragedy node: Heiress Corp's first major setback correction successful. World authenticity plus 10%. Host, you are one step closer to becoming this world's hero. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, and it finally dawned on me. To hell with the $3 billion. This system was using me as some kind of twisted saint. And so began my absurd new career as a reluctant savior. I'd roar internally, "I'm going to destroy Isabella's dissertation and ruin her career," then storm into her office and dramatically shred the fake paper on her desk, which my sisters had already swapped with a copy containing proof of her accuser's fraud, accidentally showering the shredded evidence all over the university deans who had rushed to the scene. I'd scream in my head, "I'm going to Amelia's film set to harass that creepy investor and get her blacklisted." Then, armed with a hidden camera for my sisters, I'd panic and scream when the investor made a move on me, perfectly capturing his predatory behavior on tape. Every one of my suicidal schemes, with the silent cooperation of my family, miraculously turned into a brilliant maneuver that saved them. The way the Heiresses looked at me transformed from complicated to openly affectionate and indulgent. They listened to my childish, convoluted plans and played their parts in my ridiculous dramas without missing a beat. As for Julian, the supposed protagonist of this tragic world, his schemes were thwarted time and again by me, the unpredictable glitch in the system. His main character energy was visibly fading. The final tragedy node involved Chloe. Julian, in a last-ditch effort, orchestrated a car accident, hoping to seriously injure her so he could swoop in and play the role of her devoted guardian. However, when the truck he'd arranged for came barreling toward her, I was already there. Following the script in my head, I used my flashy sports car, bought with my allowance, to execute a perfect drift, positioning my car directly in the path of the truck, shielding Chloe's. After a deafening crash, everything went black. When I woke up, I was in a hospital room. I opened my eyes to see my entire family gathered around my bed, their faces etched with worry. Chloe was holding my hand, her eyes red and swollen. Ding! Final tragedy node: the heroine's demise correction successful. World authenticity, 100%. Final mission complete. Reward: permanent residency and your one true love. The $3 billion has been automatically converted into your wife's lifetime allowance. Host is advised to perform well to secure early disbursement. I looked at the system's message, then at Chloe, and finally accepted my fate. Couldn't go back, and I didn't want to. A year later, my wedding to Chloe was the talk of the city. I stood at the altar in a sharp tuxedo, my palms sweating with nerves. Chloe, in her stunning white gown, was so beautiful I couldn't look away. The officiant asked solemnly, "Ethan Heiress, do you take Chloe Vanderbilt to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold?" I took a deep breath and said, loud and clear, "I do." My inner voice, however, was louder and clearer than it had ever been. "Of course I do. You think I'd give up $3 billion to stay here if I didn't?" Although, the system did say that money is now her allowance, and I have to be on my best behavior to get any of it, this married life might be even more challenging than the missions. But still, looking at that face, being under her thumb for the rest of my life, it seems totally worth it. A tiny, almost imperceptible smile touched Chloe's lips. She leaned in close and whispered, so only I could hear, "Don't worry, I'll give you a very generous starting allowance. My hero."